As I mentioned earlier in the show, Joe Biden appears to have flip-flopped on his stance against super PACs, but that's not all. Presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard says she will not seek re-election to the House of Representatives in 2020.
Team Rising is here to dig into this change of heart. Colin Rojero is a Democratic strategist. Chris Prudhomme is a Republican strategist.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Thank you. Friends of the show. Very interesting news this morning from Tulsi Gabbard. She says she will not be seeking re-election. Let's take a listen to her announcement.
As president, I will immediately begin to work to end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, end our interventionist foreign policy of carrying out wasteful regime change wars, and instead redirect our precious resources towards serving the needs of the people right here at home. As such, I will not be seeking re-election to Congress in 2020, and I humbly ask you for your support for my candidacy for President of the United States.
That's a big announcement there from Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, she's going all in on this presidential race. Now, Colin, I do understand, though, she was seeking a tough re-elect back at home in her own district. I mean, what do you make of this? I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah, look, I think she's probably sick of the congressional job and looking for an admin position. So should a Democratic administration come in, she's setting herself up to be, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, something in there. And if you looked at, I believe it was the second debate after Kamala had attacked Joe, she came in as the heat-seeking missile for Joe. So maybe she's setting herself up for something on that side.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. What do you make of this, Chris?
I think exactly what Colin said is absolutely right. But it absolutely is uniquely interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's a big time away, a big election, but I certainly think she is setting herself up. But I think the bigger thing is who's going to actually be the nominee, and I think that's kind of all over the place right now.
Right, she fended off a primary last time. She was facing a much more significant primary this time. Ever since she came to Congress, there's been talk about what's her next move. It was always clear that she was not going to be satisfied just being a congresswoman from Hawaii, which is a particularly difficult job. You're flying.
I was going to say, people don't
week.
actually understand how awful it is to fly back and forth between Hawaii and Washington every week.
It's one thing to be a senator. Another thing to be a House member. Brian Schatz, he flies from D.C. to San Francisco, then he spends the night in San Francisco, and then he flies to Hawaii, spends like 2 days, 3 days at the most there, and then flies all the way direct back to Washington, and then does it again three or 4 days later. That's the kind of thing that, it beats working. But it's awfully miserable.
That's a brutal life.
But so what does she do now if she doesn't win the nomination? I mean, she's at 1%, 2%. Does she go third party, you think? She has said she won't.
I would highly doubt she does that. That doesn't set her up to do anything after that except being a pariah to the Democratic Party. And so I think her as a third party is a bad career move for her unless she has something planned that's non-political that we don't know about.
Well, that's the question, though, Chris, is like, she's already kind of a pariah, right? Like, a lot of the Democrats are very upset with her. Hillary Clinton, the progressive left is fine with her, but a lot of the establishment, they hate Tulsi Gabbard. Neera Tanden, all these people saying she's a Russian toady. A lot of the media was on her side. I played a clip on this show, an MSNBC reporter saying, well, she didn't say she wasn't a Russian asset. She didn't deny being a Russian asset. It's ridiculous. I mean, she's been smeared completely by the establishment here. So, I mean, she's already in a pariah status.
It's something that's going to be interesting. I say if the party does not get obviously if they don't win the election, she'll probably hop in the private sector, do something like that. Or I think she'll still be around for quite some time. We can probably see her on K Street. She'll have a major impact with the DNC or something in that capacity or something.
I wonder if I don't know, Ryan. What do you think? K Street?
I don't see her there because she's not very well liked among her colleagues, and so you're not making a whole lot of connections and money on K Street that way. Fox News contributor, CNN contributor, I think is certainly a possibility if that's something that she wanted. But she's a very unorthodox person, so it's difficult to predict exactly what she would do.
Which is why she can do unorthodox things on K Street potentially.
Maybe, who knows?
Be a Modi lobbyist.
So we also got to talk about this Joe Biden's campaign. He's flip-flopping on fundraising super PAC money. Played a clip earlier in the show from PBS NewsHour in which he said he gave Bernie Sanders the idea not to take money from super PACs. He seems to, he was touting quite a bit of the progressive left positions back then. Very different from what he is now. Let's take a listen to that and we'll get your guys' reaction.
I show up wherever I go. And I talk about the need for a woman's right to choose being protected. I talk about the need for us to be open arms for immigration. I talk about all the things we talk about in terms of the minority communities, what we need to do. And I also talk about, in addition to that, I talk about the fact that I know you have a problem. Here's what we're going to do. There should be free college education, for God's sake. Why do we talk about it? All we got to do is eliminate one loophole, stepped up basis. You can pay for every kid in America to go to community colleges for free who in fact qualified. And so and by the way, there's never been a consistency before.
So you see, Colin, both in that interview and in that clip, he was trying to cast himself as like one of the true progressive left. And yet, I mean, to go out and now he's saying he's going to take super PAC money. I mean, his campaign is on total life support. What do you make of this?
I'm not sure it's a total life support because he's, it depends on what poll you're reading, but he's 1 or 2 in everything. He's not falling that far down.
I mean from a structural perspective. Yeah. So he's floating up near the top, but all the organizing, the money, everything else is a disaster.
That is true, but that comes as, as you stay near the top of the poll. Right. So, but here's what I would say. The playing field is such that super PACs are allowed to play ball in American politics.
Yeah, sure.
And if you are going to be the nominee, or you think you're going to be the nominee, and you need help to get there, why would you limit yourself and the weapons you have at your disposal to try to win? For me, that's it.
Well, what do you think, Chris?
Well, I think more importantly is that, I agree with what you're saying, but he said he was not going to take money from super PACs. And the reality,
that's the thing.
And the reality is this. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been doing extremely well with the American people that support them with individual dollars.
Right. He
is not. His fundraising is horrible. His organization is horrible. And the reality is that he's just not doing well fundraising. So it goes back to why people hate politics in America, is because they flip off and they sway based on what needs to be done. And right now he needs more money. So his only option is to say, well, let me justify you having super PACs.
Right. He has no people. And how do you win a general election with no people?
Right.
I know Twitter is not real life, as people always say, but it is unnerving how if you go out and drag Joe Biden on Twitter, there's no response.
Yeah.
You say a word about Kamala Harris,
you're going to get swarmed.
Even
Pete Buttigieg.
Run for cover.
Even Pete Buttigieg, yeah.
Hillary Clinton 2016 had real human beings who would defend her every single move against all critics, no matter how obscure. Joe Biden doesn't have anybody out there supporting him, and it's reflected in his fundraising dollars. A super PAC might be able to buy a primary, but could a super PAC buy a general election?
I think it's definitely part of the mix, without a doubt. Look, there are going to be super PACs on the Republican side.
It's a one-ingredient blender right now, super PAC.
Well, in addition to a campaign, can a super PAC, an IE effort can never pull a candidate all the way across the finish line. It doesn't work that way. They have to have their own momentum. You can push a little bit. Yeah. So it will be part of the mix on either side of the aisle. But I think to say that Joe Biden doesn't have any people supporting him is probably a stretch. I mean, he's got people supporting him. He's winning in the polls.
So he's got people who support him, but he doesn't have hardcore support.
Right.
And it's all very like, I like Joe. That's basically what it amounts to, which is fine. It works. No, it can win. I'm the first person to admit it. That if you keep that guy out of the news long enough, all the way up to Iowa, he'll win. I really think he could. But that's what it is. I mean, ultimately, and you can't win a general election that way. There's no way you're going to lose.
But it just goes to show how he's really not resonating and with many Democratic voters. That's really what it comes down to. He's not getting the individual support. And again, I go back to that's what people hate about politics today, is that they sway what they things they want to do. But more importantly, they say, well, since we can't win it with the people, let me get the big guys, the donors to come in and support. And that's what people don't want.
That is what people hate.
Hold on a second. We are making an assumption that Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are reflective of real life and voters, and that's just not the case. You could have a lot of voters or a lot of people on Facebook who like you and respond when Twitter attacks you, but they're not reflective of the voting pool. It's not reflecting the Democratic primary.
But nobody's donating to him.
Yeah, that is the main thing. That's it. Right? That's actually the main thing.
It's not nobody.
Yeah.
Close
well,
to
I mean,
nobody.
he's got 31% only of people who are giving him money with less than $200. That's the lowest in the entire
of anybody.
field.
But look,
that's pretty bad.
He still is raising money.
Sure, he's raising. Of course,
he is not. He's not with everybody else.
Yeah.
I will cede that. Yeah.
All right, guys, sit tight. We're going to come right back after a quick break.